All right, from Catherine, any suggestions for recreational players in terms of how best to divide your time between private lessons, practice with friends, and matches to improve, i.e., becoming a better overall player? Really good question, Catherine. And we're going to actually break this down a little bit more granular. You'll see what I mean in a second. So we're gonna break things up into 4 different categories. Category number 1 is lessons. What's the point of lessons? Why are we showing up? Well, hopefully, and this isn't why everybody takes lessons, but the assumption is we're there to gain new information from a coach, to try new techniques and try to improve our skills, obviously. Try new tactics, maybe try different patterns or different combinations so that we can learn different ways of challenging our opponents and start learning new habits, start developing new and better skills so we can become a new and better player. What all this has in common is it's new. This is all new stuff. This is where we and this is what a lot of you are doing on YouTube or listening to podcasts or reading emails or blogs that are full of good instruction. New information, new techniques, new tactics, new ways of thinking about the game. This is kind of like the very first starting point of becoming a better player. Step number 2, or phase number 2, is solo practice. You didn't mention this, but it's critical. We're going to talk about practice with a partner, but also solo practice. This is just totally skipped by most tennis players. We're taking the new information, the new movements, the new habits, the new tactics, the new patterns, and we start mastering them. When you finish a lesson, your coach doesn't have a magic wand that he or she can just like tap you on the shoulder and say, and now I've bestowed upon you all of these new and wonderful skills. No, you have to actually go train those things. Understanding it is step 1, but then you have to go train it. And doing it by yourself at first is really valuable because you can control the environment. You can do that by doing shadow swings, by dropping and hitting, by using a ball machine. Notice this is taking a progression here. Easiest, a little bit harder, and a little bit harder. And so you can take a new movement or a new tactic or new target, and you can practice it a little bit harder, a little bit harder, a little bit harder. This is how you develop a skill. But unfortunately, tennis players I think, turn their nose up a lot of times at the idea of practicing by themselves against a wall, on an empty court, in their basement, in their driveway, and just rehearsing and repeating better movements, new movements. So after solo practice comes partner practice. So you did mention this one. So now we're taking a partially mastered habit from solo practice that you've been working on, and we're taking it kind of into real life. That's why I put real life in air quotes. It's kind of real life in the sense that now we're actually hitting with a human back and forth. And so there's much more challenge. It's much more dynamic. Even if the human wanted to hit us the same ball to the same place again and again, they couldn't do that because they're not a machine. So there's a lot more variation. And so that new habit or skill is getting stressed a lot more. So you can do this through cooperative rallies where you're working together, through competitive rallies where you're keeping track of score. You can start to add serve and return and start to make it like a real match, but it's still not a real match. What this is doing is preparation for real competition, for serious competition, where the stakes are higher, the pressure is higher, the challenge is higher, because our opponent is trying to make us as uncomfortable as possible. And so that's phase 4, serious or like real matches. So this is a stress test now of your habits under maximum pressure. Your opponent can do anything they want to try to make you uncomfortable or make you annoyed or make you play poorly. And now your best interest is out the window. The person on the other side of the court, not only do they probably not care if you play well or play bad, but they would probably prefer you play badly in a real match. Like if you go play a tournament or you go to a league match, I'm not saying that they're a bad person and they're just hoping that you have a bad day. In terms of their success, it would be easier for them if you're off. It's more likely they're going to win. So as a competitor, they're trying whatever they can to make you play poorly. That's the whole point. And now everything counts, so there's more pressure. And now only your most trained habits are going to actually show up. So the stuff that you learned about in your lesson on Tuesday, and you're like, oh man, this is great. You hit a couple amazing, forehands, couple of incredible serves. You walk off the court, walking on air and you feel incredible. the chances of that showing up in your match on Friday is almost zero because you've only done it a couple times and only in a very supportive, controlled, comfortable environment. And now we're taking all that away in your match. And so your old serve is going to come back out and you're going to go back to what you were doing before. So remember, under maximum stress and challenge, only your deepest, most trained habits will come to the surface. Anything that's just partially mastered, even if you have it mostly mastered, will stay on the back burner. This is the purpose of these different phases of training or mastery. So there's lessons. It's just about gaining new stuff. There's solo practice. Now, this is just the first couple baby steps of learning and mastering the new thing. Then there's partner practice. Now it's starting to be kind of like real life. And then there's serious matches. This is maximum stress, maximum pressure, where you're being just pushed all the way to the breaking point. And so anything that's not really, really, really mastered is not even going to be useful. It's not even going to show up for you. So back to the original question. How best to divide your time? So how do you divide your time? We have to lay this groundwork first because I just feel like there's such misunderstanding about what the purpose is and what's being accomplished in each of these different kind of types of time being spent on the court. So how do we divide our time between practice and matches and lessons? Catherine, here's what I want you to consider. These are questions you have to answer, and until you know the answers to these questions, I can't actually give you like, oh, you do 20% and 30% and 40% and 20%. Like, oh, that's how you split it up. And that's the best way. No, you have to know the answer to these questions. Which phase of execution is most important to you? Some people could care less about serious competition. And they just want to go out there and have fun, hit with their friends. Yeah, maybe they'll play a match, but it's like against the person they always play a match against. And so they don't need the hardcore like stress and pressure of like going to a tournament because they're just never going to do that. So which of the 4 phases are most important to you? And listen, some people just take lessons. I know because I've been at clubs where these people, believe it or not, like those of you watching on the internet, like you probably don't believe me, but there's all kinds of tennis players in a private club environment who are just professional lesson takers. And I know this is mind-blowing probably to a lot of you, but they'll show up twice a week for a lesson, and that's all the tennis they do. They hit with the coach gives them like some tips, and they work on it, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they don't do anything else. They don't do solo practice, they don't do partner practice, they don't play real matches, they're just professional lesson takers. I'm not saying that in like a condescending or like judgmental way at all. I'm just letting you all know, like just for context, like that's a real thing. So which of the 4 phases are most important, Catherine, to you? And question number 2, are you optimizing for wins or just to develop skills? This is a whole spectrum too. Some people don't care how they look, what stroke they use, what racket they use. They don't care about they don't care how pretty it is. They just want to get the win. And frankly, it makes them satisfied and they feel accomplished when they win with ugly strokes. We all know somebody, like that, right? Or do all you care about is you just want to look like Roger Federer? We also know somebody like that too. And they look pretty, but they lose like every time they play a real match. 2 totally ends of the spectrum. You have to know, like, where are you on that spectrum? And then number 3, what time horizon are you optimizing for? Are you looking for your best possible game, your best possible self this season? Or are you thinking, man, 5 years from now, I will sacrifice and take however many steps back I need to this year and next year and the year after that, so that 4 years from now, I've built like the best possible version of myself on a tennis court? You have to be able to answer these questions before you can decide how to split up your time. So here's 2 quick examples. So just total like hypothetical examples here. All you care about is wins in the short term, like this season. So all you care about is your win-loss this season, and that's it. You don't care how it looks. You don't care how ugly it is. Like, you just want to win right now. Well, we don't need anything new. Forget lessons. Like, in fact, the last thing we want is a whole bunch of new like thoughts and like, oh, you should swing low to high and make sure your unit turn is more coiled, and oh, you should practice your inside out. Like, no, you don't want any of that stuff just kind of bogging you down. We don't want to inject a bunch of new ideas or skills or movements. So just forget about lessons. And because we're not really taking in anything new, we're going to minimize solo practice. What we really need is lots of partner practice with serve and return to mimic like a real life point, a real life match, and lots of real matches. Those are the reps we need. We need keeping track of score with a winner and a loser, with either a partner or with a real opponent, and we need to just totally maximize that end of the spectrum. So, as example 1, there's a lot of players like this. Example 2, all you care about is skills development over the next 5 years. So now we're way over on the other end of the spectrum. Instead of win-loss, we're thinking skills. I just want to look pretty. I want to develop, because that's what's satisfying to me, is like I get my most of my joy from just doing it right. I don't care if I win or lose. I just want to do it the right way. I work with a lot of players like this. And their target is like, let's say 5 years from now. Okay, well now we need lots of input. We need good lessons that are showing real information about the reality of your habits right now. And you need lots of solo practice to take those new techniques, those new skills from 0 to like 1, and from 1 to 2, and from 2 to 3. Like we need to build up the foundation. And so lots of lessons and lots of solo practice is really critical. And you want to minimize partner practice and only make it really controlled, like cooperative rallies. Because if you go play a bunch of points, all that new stuff that you're learning about and practicing is totally going to go out the window. You're not going to use your new forehand, your new serve, your new backhand. When all of a sudden the score is on the line and you're playing against your nemesis, like your friend, but the person who you really want to beat on the other side, it's a game to 10, you're not doing your new stuff. You're going to do the old stuff. And so ideally, we're not playing any real matches either, because that's the highest stress. And so all your old stuff is going to come back out. So I'm just setting up 2 hypothetical like scenarios here, just so you understand. So two ends of the spectrum. Most players are going to fall somewhere in between. And so you need to figure out like where you are, and then based on hopefully your understanding now of the purpose of each of these 4 types of training, you can split up your time wisely so that you're developing the right things for your goals. If I don't know the answers to those questions I talked about a second ago, I can't possibly prescribe to you how to spend your time. Knowing what you're shooting for is critical. So ask yourself those questions, and you'll be on your way.